Hey Jesse.
Hi Flo.
Here's a weird question for you. Did you know that the Great War channel runs on money?
I did not know that, Flo, even though my dad told me that money makes the world go round.
That is true, and it also makes YouTube channels go round, as a matter of fact. And right now, the YouTube channel income that we generate hit a bit of a rough spot, mainly because there's this thing which I don't know how it got called that, but it's called Adpocalypse. It basically means a few bigger companies pulled out budget from YouTube and we get a lot less ad revenue now. And we actually need money to operate the channel.
This is true.
This is true. What do we need the money for?
Well, for one thing, I like to use it to buy some history books to help us with our research for the episodes.
Yeah, that is certainly, of course, the core aspect of any history channel is research. Research takes time and books, sources. And the more obscure topics we want to cover, sometimes the more expensive the sources get. Then there's, of course, other thing. We are filming this in a studio. A studio needs lights and a camera and equipment. We need to maintain that. That costs money.
I look terrible without proper lighting, so this is important.
True. The other thing is that, it's not just Jesse talking in the studio. I mean, mainly it is, but we also like to illustrate what he's talking about with, for example, animated maps. We need to generate these. We need to make these animations work. So the guy who animates all these maps and makes them move to make it easier to understand, for example, the Russian Civil War, is our motion designer. He gets money for that. We also add music and a few sound effects to make this all a bit more exciting. This is our sound designer. He also gets some money. So long story short, there's also the archives, the archival footage that we use. Some archives charge money to get access to good quality historic material. And long story short, the channel needs your support out there in YouTube land. So if you're thinking right now, hey, I actually want to support the Great War channel, how can you do that?
Well, there are a couple of different things you can do if you'd like to support us. For one thing, you could take a look at our merchandise. We've released some new things, including the poster behind us here. But also you can choose to support us on Patreon. Now, you probably know about Patreon, or you may know about Patreon. You can find all the information about our goals and the different perks you can get. The Patreon podcast, for example.
Very important one.
Indeed. On the Patreon page for the Great War, and you can find the link to that in our video descriptions.
Yeah, the Patreon podcast is one of the things that we came up with recently. It comes out once a month. We talk a bit more about the history behind the show, a bit more about the production, but, and this is a premiere this month, we also like to talk to historical experts about topics that we couldn't cover as much as we wanted to. For example, this month we have an expert on the podcast who gives us a bit more insight into the British and Commonwealth forces in Murmansk during the Russian Civil War, which we both thought was particularly interesting. And there's also a few more goals there on the Patreon page. For example, in the future, once we have enough funding, we want to go out to original battlefields again. We would like to film in museums again. And that's the sort of thing where our current budget doesn't allow that. There's also another way to support the show. It's a new feature on YouTube, in case you don't like to pay money to Patreon. Basically, below the video player is a small button that says join, I think. And for $5 a month, you get the same perks that you would get as if you would join for $5 a month on Patreon. So it's completely your choice. We don't really care if the money comes from Patreon or YouTube. We are thankful for every dollar that comes. And we are thankful for everybody who has supported us in the past, who's still supporting us. And if you consider supporting us now, we are also very thankful for that.
Indeed. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go off to my library to do some more research, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.